Thank you, delegates. I hope you enjoyed your toolbox talks and have a few more strategies in your back pocket for the couple of years ahead of us. I'm really, really excited and honoured to introduce our next speaker, who doesn't really need an introduction, but let me tell you a little bit about Sally McManus, the ACTU Secretary. And she was elected as the Secretary of the ACTU in 2017, the first woman to hold this position since the creation of the ACTU in 1927. She gained a traineeship with the ACTU in 1994 and then became an organiser. And she has been elected to the role of branch secretary with the ASU. Whilst there, she led many campaigns in the private, public and community sectors, including the first collective agreement for IBM workers anywhere in the world, the anti-privatisation campaign at Sydney Water, as well as the equal pay campaign for community workers. This was a 7-year campaign that delivered pay increases of between 18 and 40%. Yes, that deserves a clap, it does. And throughout these campaigns and after, Sally has displayed her extensive organisational and strategic leadership experience, bringing people together across industries and levels. But above all of those wonderful things, it takes great courage to be a union leader of any kind, but an awful lot more to be a woman union leader in the kind of world that we are living and working in now. You have to be passionate, you have got to be determined, and you have to be steadfast. Sally and Michelle were recently re-elected unopposed to their positions as the Secretary and the President of the ACTU. Please give her a rock star welcome, Sally McManus.
I want to acknowledge country and pay respect to elders past and present. That was a pretty awesome welcome. Thank you so much, everyone. I also wanted to say what a wonderful night I had last night. What an honour it was to be there. How awesome is Uncle Bob and Auntie Graceland? They are really special. I can't believe she's 73 and apparently is still doing shifts. I just think she was just absolute inspiration, and you must be so proud that she's a member of your union and has played that role over a long period of time. Thank you, Sally Ann, Sarah and Grant. Yeah, it's really great to be here. I sort of have this sort of speech that I give when I go around the place, but I think I'm pretty much going to chuck it out and just address all of you directly. As you know, you are the biggest union in the country, and you are the biggest union in Queensland. And really what I wanted to say to all of you is that it's your time to step up. And when I say that, your time to step up in your role in the union movement. Because if you think of the last 200 or so years of unionism in Australia, there's been different unions that have been at the centre, different unions that have been the strongest or the biggest. And you think back in the day, it would have been shearers here in Queensland in particular, and the role that they played and how important they were. They were, for a period of time, the face of the union movement. At other times it's been railway workers, then it's been people like factory workers. Like you think of the big factories that we've had in Australia when we used to have a car industry, and when governments ran a lot of those big places like workshops as well in the railways and all of that. That was the face of the centre of the union movement. They were the biggest and the main unions at the centre of things. And as time's gone on, that has changed. And now it's you. Like, you are the face of the average union member. You are easily the biggest union. And with all of that, I think comes responsibility. And it comes responsibility in terms of the role that you play, because in a way now, like, you're the heart of the union movement. And where we go now and into the future depends very much on the type of union movement you want us to be. Not what other people want us to be, but what you want us to be. And that is why I'm saying to you today, it's really important for the leaders of the union movement, for myself, Michelle, for Jacqueline here in Queensland, for all the union leaders, to have you step up and to put on the front of the stage the values that you, I know, hold dear. One of the things I was thinking to myself as I sat there last night and watched the awards and the honouring of your members for their professional role and the role they play in workplaces is just how much, the values of leadership relate back to integrity, and the integrity of those people who were nominated, and of course the winners, but all the people who were nominated, and how probably very much in your profession and your roles as nurses and midwives, things like integrity are so much part of what you do and how you do your jobs. So probably the differences between you as a union member and you as a nurse and those values are one and the same in so many ways. And they're also union values. And this is where we need to be reinforcing what they are, because as unionists, we believe in the dignity of every single working person. The fact that every single working person deserves respect at work and deserves dignity at work. That's at the heart of what we believe in. We also believe that we're stronger together, and that's where our strength comes from. That despite our differences, despite our cultural backgrounds, despite our genders, where we come from in the country, the jobs that we do, by banding together under the banner of our values and the things we believe in, that's where our strength comes from. And amongst all of those things, those strong values that us as trade unionists hold, there is absolutely no place whatsoever for anyone putting themselves before everyone else. No place whatsoever for violence, no place whatsoever for criminal activity or for corruption, because in fact, that's the opposite, the absolute opposite to what we believe in and who we are. Because for those of us who are elected to represent workers, and that's every single person in this room, that's of course the people you elect, but it's you who are elected by workers. It's an honour to serve working people. It's an absolute honour, and it's an honour that we have to treasure and respect every day in how we go about our jobs. And the union is not their union, it's your union. ACTU's not me, it's all of us. Each of us as leaders will come and go at various times, and we're the custodians of what the people before us have built up. The wages, the conditions, the culture, all of it. And then we go and we hand over to someone else, but in the end, the union continues. And with that comes great responsibilities. And so this is a time where things that have happened, and I'm talking about, of course, the CFMEU and the allegations that have been aired, and some of the things that aren't allegations, they're actual facts. When they come to the fruition, it is incumbent on all of us to stand so firm in terms of what we believe in, what unions are, and how we're going to go forward together and what we will not accept. And no matter... And that's not going to be easy. There's no walking away from the fact that's not going to be easy, because there's a whole lot of people who are outside of our movement who know they can make money by acting corruptly. We're dealing with, in some parts of our country, organised crime that have jumped onto our unions to infiltrate them, so they can make money through their own businesses. But we have to rid our movement of that. We have to do it no matter how hard it is, and we just cannot take one step backwards in our resolution to absolutely achieve that, because people say to me sometimes, you know, oh, there's criminals in that industry and et cetera, and that's just the way things are. Well, why are we holding ourselves to the standard of employers, or for that matter, people that behave like that? We should hold ourselves actually to a higher standard, because our members deserve that. Our members are the ones who deserve unions that are free of corruption, free of violence, but always focused on them and the values that we hold dear. So I wanted to tell you, in a way, it's sort of our superpower. Every time in history, and most of the time in history it's been this in the union movement, when we've put together both our values and solidarity, which is sticking together as a union movement, that's when we've taken working people in our country forward. That's when we've lifted living standards for all people. We would not have Medicare if it were not for us putting our values together with solidarity. We would not have superannuation if it were not for that. We would not have things like the 8-hour day if we were not arguing for our values and the right for everyone to be treated with dignity and have time to themselves, with our sticking together to give us power to achieve the things that we wanted to achieve. And when you look back the last 2 years since federal Labor's been in power, we've gone about as a united union movement doing that, like using our superpower of our values and both our solidarity across our movement to again take workers forward. Because, for example, we wouldn't accept, like once we knew that lives could be saved by people being given the time and not having their jobs under threat so they could leave violent and abusive relationships. Once we knew that lives could be saved if people had the leave and they didn't have to be concerned also about losing their job by having paid family and domestic violence leave, we went and we fought for it. And we fought for it not just in one union or your union, we fought for it with every single union in workplaces right across the country. We brought together our strong values about everyone should be treated with dignity, and if we knew there was something that could be done at work to make the world fairer and more equal, well, we would do that. And now, because we did that, every single Australian worker under the federal laws, even casuals, are entitled to 10 days paid family and domestic violence leave. And because we knew that, and we wouldn't accept that young people coming into the workplace would never know what it's like to have a permanent job, when casualisation had gone so far that people never even knew what it was like to have a paid holiday, because we wouldn't accept that. And we also wouldn't accept that we had these big tech companies that were starting to allocate jobs via apps like delivery riders, but not just delivery riders. You think about any job could be broken up. Your jobs could be broken up like that, and you could be allocated shifts and allocated jobs. And it was all a means to get around workers' rights, to cut wages and conditions. Because we wouldn't accept that, we fought and we've won laws that give stronger rights for casuals to convert into permanent jobs, and world-first rights for gig workers so that they get the minimums that we fought for 100 years ago. And because we're not robots, we fought and won, and it's going to come in for federal workers on the 26th of August, so that's 1 month away, the right to disconnect. So bosses cannot just expect people will work for free and be constantly connected to work, answering emails and responding to work for free. And because as a union movement, We know there's a gender pay gap, and we know that women aren't yet treated equally across the workforce, especially in industries outside of yours, but there's still that gender pay gap. We fought and we won these things. Now, every large employer has to declare what their gender pay gap is. Pay secrecy clauses, which were one of these things being used in places like the finance industry and elsewhere, where you weren't allowed to say what pay you're on to your workmates. Guess what? Like, that hid all of this, unequal pay. They're now unlawful. We've won new rights in law for unions to be able to take equal pay cases. All of these things. We run stronger sexual harassment laws to allow the independent umpire to put stop orders to stop sexual harassment and to move perpetrators. All of those things we've won because we wouldn't accept that not everyone was not equal in the workplace. Also, we've won an extra 2 weeks paid parental leave for everyone, and we're not finished there yet. Until it gets to 52 weeks, we won't be finished because we're way behind the rest of the world there. And because we knew that wages were not keeping up with the cost of living, and that was because in the federal area our bargaining laws were just so broken, we won multi-employer bargaining for a whole lot of workers, especially in the care industry. Stopped bosses cancelling agreements while you're negotiating, gave the independent umpire greater rights to arbitrate agreements if bosses aren't agreeing, giving workers more power when they're negotiating agreements. And what's happened? Enterprise agreements have gone up like this, the number of them, as has pay, the average pay that people are now getting out of agreements, the same thing too. Now, imagine if that had not happened with this cost of living crisis, just how much worse it would be. Like, we're setting things up in the future so that our kids don't have to have a situation where wages are continually going absolutely nowhere. And of course, one of the big things federally that we've won is rights for workplace delegates. Now, it's different under your state laws, which a lot of you are under, and you've got them in a lot of your agreements. But for those of you in the federal area, and for all of those, your kids and your grandkids, the right of workplace delegates to be represent their members. It's now unlawful for bosses to lie to workplace delegates. I still sort of laugh about that. I don't know how they're going to implement it. To be treated with respect, as you should be when you're representing the people that you represent. Because we wouldn't accept tradies dying from silicosis, we've banned engineering stone. Very, very important. And one of the big issues, of course, are unpaid student placements, and your union. Very, very key in that, really intervening and making sure that Commonwealth prac payments for undergraduates, plus also those doing diplomas, will get $320 a week to support them come next year, and that's because of the work of the ANMF. In Queensland here, you've been leading the way with rights for workers, and that's the same thing really, isn't it? When you can see an injustice and banding together to do something about it, and the fact that reproductive leave is something that's coming in first place in the country here in Queensland, won by you, absolutely wonderful. And our job is to spread it across the country. Of course, we know Peter Dutton's going to take it away, right? Like, he sees all these things. He knows all these things. And at the moment, he's doing what I'm doing, but the people he's talking to are all wearing suits, I can assure you. And he's telling them, he's promising them, like, if he gets elected, he'll undo all these gains for workers, all of that hard work that we've put in place there. So we've sort of got to watch our backs as well and know that we've got to protect what we've won. But really what I wanted to say to you is they're all demonstrations of us at our best, us when we combine our values with our collective power as a union movement, and that is what we're going to have to draw on when we're coming into the future, because, you know, when those days, when you have tough days as a workplace representative, when we all have tough days as union representatives, and when you're under pressure, or when you're questioned, or when you've got to think about what's the right thing to do, none of us need to scramble around for what is the right thing to do. So we know what our values are, and they are the things that keep us strong. They are the things that sort of guide us when there's questions around what's right and what's wrong. Because what we know is right, was right the whole time unions have been around, and will be into the future. And they are the things that need to shine. And really what I'm saying to you as the mighty QMNU and ANMF as the biggest union is really need you to step up and to be that rock, to be that solid carrier of our values through thick and through thin. You know what? I'm so optimistic about our union movement, because I look out at all of you and I don't have one bit of doubt that you will do what I've asked. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. I'm really happy to take questions. Really happy to take questions.
We do have a little bit of time. If you want to ask Sally a question, if you could just make your way to any of the podiums and tell her who you are and where you're from. Thank you.
Hi Sally, thanks for your speech, and you're always very encouraging. My question, and I don't want to put a dampener on things, but what happens now with the CFMEU? Like, are they still a part of our union movement? Are they disbanded? Are they rebranded? What happens?
So the ACTU executive, which your union's represented on, as is every union is represented on the ACTU executive, resolved, I think it was a week ago, might have been to suspend the construction division of the CFMEU until we can be confident that they've cleaned up their own house. And so what is going to happen over the next couple of weeks is an administrator is going to be appointed into that union. The powers of an administrator, they still act in the interests of the members. That's who they're accountable to. We want to make sure, and I want to be really clear, there's lots of good people in the CFMU, lots of very good people. Those very good people need to be given the chance to rebuild and to be supported, because when an administrator comes in, they are then running the union, not the elected officials. The administrator has got the job of dealing with all the allegations, then putting in place governance so that to prevent things happening again, and then they'll call for elections. So as a union movement, we want to see that union back in members' hands as soon as possible. We want to see that union clean. We want to get behind all the good people in the CFMEU, because that industry needs a strong union, really needs a strong union, because let's face it, they're standing up against some of the worst people, and that there's been plenty of times in history where the leaders of the CFMEU have been the ones who stand up to the Crims, have been the ones who've said, no, we're not putting up with any of this. But I would also say this, it's not just up to the union movement. We will do our part as a union movement to support the rebuilding of that union, but it's also up to the employers. We're sort of like 1/5 of it, the rest of it is the employers. They're the ones who've hired the bikies. They're the ones who've got deals with underworld figures to be, IR fixers. They're the ones who've done all of that. So it can't be all on us, because even if we did achieve all of that and we build a big wall against it, they're going to come pushing it down again. So this has to be a united effort, but most of all, that those workers in the construction industry deserve the strong union, and that's what we're all going to get behind.
Sorry, got it right there. I suppose what it is, the question I have is, how do we counteract the LNP, the Dutton effect at a Commonwealth level in regards to their prepping their stuff? What do we need to do as individuals, preparing not just our working colleagues, our members and stuff, but also communities, families and stuff like that, to get the message out? Because I've dealt with LNP governments at national levels on health stuff, and they're very medically focused and really drop nursing out of a lot of things and leave us off the table when we're talking about health conversations. And we've had that exponential growth in supporting of nursing and midwifery, and I don't want to lose that. So I suppose, what do we need to do as individuals, as delegates, in prepping our community in preparation for the election, because it will become upon us quicker than we think about it?
Well, the first thing they'll do is cut out the voice of workers out of every single forum, and as you experienced, as did every other union, but so important in the health area during COVID, they didn't even know who the representatives of the workers were until they absolutely needed them, and they lost all of that expertise, even internally within government, in terms of actually paying respect to workers and their expertise and their knowledge. Wasn't Peter Dutton rated the worst health minister ever? I think that was particularly the case. But in doing everything he will be absolutely about pushing you out and your voices out, which in the end will be terrible for the country in terms of outcomes for citizens. So there's all of that. And in the end, the big thing is that he has to promise, and it's not a hard promise for him to make, he has to promise Gina Rinehart, who's asked for it, he has to promise all the people in big business that if he's elected, he'll wind back the rights for workers. They are very upset about the new rights that workers have got, and that will be his promise, and that no one can afford to lose anything at the moment, with cost of living and how hard it is. The idea that anything could be taken off us, that is what we've got to talk to people about, the truth.
Thank you.
Yama Sally. Jojo, First Nations delegate for the statewide branch for First Nations. I want to first thank the ACTU for supporting us in the Yes campaign last year. I'm also a FNWA member. So I guess my question is also that as we move ahead, and if we're going to end up with a Liberal government is how much we're going to have our rights as First Nations people taken away from us, and how is the ACTU going to support us still moving forward with treaty and truth-telling? And this is also going to is an issue for us here in Queensland if we have a Tory government as well. So I'm interested in that, but I reckon if you don't know, vote no to Dutton.
Yeah. What a great slogan. The other one will be Peter Dutton wants to nuke your wages. That's the other one I've been thinking to myself as well. First things first, the ACTU will take our guidance and from the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Committee that is at the ACTU, that is made up of First Nations people from across all the unions. And we've done that and we'll continue to do that all along. In terms of what direction they would want us to go and also support and be part of, I'm really, really confident that across the union movement that will be absolutely solid. Like we all went through together the horrible experience of the referendum, but I do not believe that's shaken anyone's resolution one little bit. I think it's just deepened the commitment of the trade union movement to the cause of justice. The path is a path not for non-Indigenous people to choose, it's a path for First Nations people to choose, and that we will walk alongside as we did when it's hard, when it's easy. Well, it's never been easy, has it? But if it is, we'll still be there, but during the hard times. And we also need to remember 67% of union members voted yes. So there's that stark difference when you pull away everything. If you look at every single variant, that's the big variant that made a difference to how people voted, but it just also says we're not big enough, doesn't it? You know, in terms of our influence in communities. And you're also right about pointing straight to the misinformation and the lies, all of that they ran and they will continue to run. The thing is that I should say that people shouldn't think, well, they're just going to win the election, because I'll tell you a few things. This is federally I'm talking about. Is it's very, very hard because they lost all these seats, right, in the inner cities to the Teals. And so it's like mathematics. When you add it all up, it's very, very hard. Not impossible, but very, very hard. Very possible that Labor could end up in a minority government, but very hard for them to do otherwise. So we don't, in the case of us as union people, we don't have to make up lies. We don't have to use misinformation. We just will tell the truth that if elected, they want to nuke your wages, and if you, what was it? If you don't know, vote no.
To Dutton, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. I am mindful of time. I've got one more question, and she was up first. Yeah, thank you. Last one.
All right, so, as everyone knows, I'm Scottish, and in Scotland, I know, who'd have guessed? So I'm Scottish, and in Scotland, obviously, if we had anyone striking, we wouldn't cross the picket lines. Everyone will have heard about miners' strikes and various others throughout the years. So I guess my question here is, obviously, we're stronger together as all the unions. How do we use that power if, for example, one of us are going into our EB agreement, so ours comes up in October, and we're not having a lot of success and we're looking for other unions to come together? Because obviously we have protected position at that point for taking action, but the other unions don't. So for me, that's different from obviously the country I've come from. How are other unions protected for us to all support each other on those occasions?
Yeah, so our laws in Australia, we don't like them, right? The fact that there's this idea that taking industrial action, if you take it, and it's a human right, it's got to be a human right. It's actually in the ILO for people to withdraw their labour, for people to be fined, like for that. We as a union movement are opposed to it, but that is the reality of where we are, right? So in the case of what solidarity would be shown or could be shown by the rest of the union movement towards you, should you decide that you need it or want it. You've got a very strong Trades and Labour Council here and around the state, in all the regional areas too. And I don't have any doubt whatsoever, if asked, the rest of the unions would be there supporting. The extent to which they are going to, stop the whole city is a different matter. But coming to support and in all the ways they possibly can, as has happened in other states at the various times, I just have no doubt that everyone else would be there.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Sally, for being so generous with your time, and Q&A from the floor could probably go on for a few hours because we rarely get time to spend time with you alone, all to ourselves. It's great. So thank you so much again for coming all this way to talk to us. And I'm completely taking on board about the heart of the union, and the face of the union movement is definitely changing, and I think we're learning to realise that power, and we're yet to fully exercise it, I believe. I would just like to say that with regards to our local Council of Trade Unions, the Queensland Council of Trade Unions, Sarah is the Senior Vice President and also Deputy Chair of the Women's Committee here in Queensland. So demonstrating that nursing midwifery voice at those leadership tables in the union movement absolutely continues, and that Annie Butler sits on a lot of those federal executive meetings for the ACTU. So our voice is well and truly there.